Welcome to today's episode of Ahead of the Game, Field Hockey Canada's webinar series. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we have a great session hosted by Jen Mark. Jen is a kinesiologist, a athletic therapist, a yoga instructor, and she's worked with the Field Hockey Canada men's NextGEN program for 7 years now. She'll be leading today's session on injury prevention and treatment for hockey players. Just some logistical notes as usual. If you've attended these, you probably already know all these, but just in case you haven't, please leave your mics on mute and your cameras off for the duration of the presentation. If you do have questions, we absolutely encourage you to ask them. You can send them either to me privately via the Zoom chat box, or you can just post them in the public Zoom chat box as well. I'll copy and paste them and send them through to Jen on a different channel so she can stay focused on her presentation, but also get the questions fed through. So yeah, really looking forward to today's session. Jen, take it away.
Perfect. Okay. Hi, everyone. So this is exciting. This is obviously a little more virtual, so I can't see you. Kevin and I were just chatting about that, but I will be looking right at you, I promise. Okay, so let me start my presentation here so that we can get right into it. So this is our topic tonight on a holistic approach to self-care, which is a fantastic way to prevent and treat injuries. The goal here is to work together at home so that we can create success abroad, creating an environment to learn and prepare for the grind, which is getting ready for maybe a tour or for championships or just major games. Coaches, athletes, parents, and staff, we all need to work together to give our athletes the time and education for self-care. Who am I? I've been with Field Hockey Canada for 7 years now. I started with working with the senior team in 2013 with the Pan Am Cup. I also did the 2017 Pan Am Cup, both times silver. I've been on many tours with the seniors and the development squad, juniors, and now the NextGEN group. In 2015, I was the Pan Am's medical manager for field hockey. I went to the 2016 Junior Pan Am Championships and the 2016 World Cup. In my other life, I have been a national champion with track and field. We won a men's team national championship, an Ontario Junior Hockey League championship, and an OJHL Cup championship. I am passionate about seeing my athletes succeed, and that is who I am. There we go. Okay, so it's much easier to repair than it is to, it's much easier to maintain than it is to repair. The whole goal of self-care is to maintain good health. And it's cheaper to maintain our bodies than it is to repair, honestly. And we're always preparing for tours, for major championships, for just maybe league games or back-to-back. And the self-care is that regular maintenance that we have to do ongoing. Sometimes we don't know what we can achieve when we're not properly prepared. So when we do actually prepare well, you can become that well-oiled machine that is achieving success. Just take those little things, right? And that's the bit of self-care. This is a bit of a roadmap here on what we'll be talking about tonight. So we're talking about foam rolling and what it does for our body, trigger point balls, stretching straps, actual stretching, yoga, warm-ups and cool-downs, sleep, nutrition, and supplementary exercises. So to begin with the tools, foam rolling, most of you probably have an idea of. It's moving fluid around. It's a little bit of a fascial release, or at least it influences the fascia. Fascia, so you know, is everywhere in our body. So let's say for our thigh, so around every quad muscle, there's 4 of them. Around every quad muscle, we have a wrap of fascia. Around all 4 quad muscles, we have a wrap of fascia. Around all 3 hamstring muscles, each one individually has fascia around it. All of the hamstrings have fascia around it. And then all of the adductors, and then the whole thigh all have fascia. And that carries our fluid, our nerves. They slide like this between the layers. So the muscles, the fascia, everything else has to slide. The foam rolling will help create that slide, or if there's any sticky points, helps with that. It's okay to do pre or post workout or training. Trigger point balls are very similar. They're just smaller. So obviously we can use hockey balls. Some guys find that they're a little bit too hard, but we can use a lacrosse ball is probably perfect. Really pay attention to doing this to your foot, because you guys do so much running and cutting, the foot takes so much trauma. It's a nice recovery method for the foot. Stretching straps help with our range of motion. The foam roller will do our flexibility, but not really help range of motion because you're not really moving the joints. Stretching and the stretching strap help for range of motion. You can see this guy he can keep his posture and he's working on his knee range of motion while he's stretching his quad. Massage guns are all the rage right now. They can help with reducing pain by the vibration of the gun. And they fatigue the muscle to an extent that the muscle will start to relax. So I would say these are much better after training or after a game, as opposed to right before, when the muscle has to go through, you know, it's a bit shocked, a bit traumatized, you know. The bands, the chin-up bands are great for, you can see this guy is doing them for hip traction. And that really helps to pull the band, the bones away from each other a little bit to create freedom of movement around the joint. You can do it for your shoulder as well. And they're a great strap to keep close by. Dowels are good for shoulder flexibility. We need that flexibility in our shoulder for tackling, for sweeping, for just holding the stick in one hand. And you'll see as well his thoracic spine, which is around his rib cage, also gets a nice opening and release. And that does a great job for our breathing and our movement. So dowels are a fantastic tool in that way. We'll be talking a little bit about breathing later. So all of these tools are great. You can have some of these tools. In this COVID environment right now, we're not into sharing equipment. So maybe having some of your own would be helpful. Even when you travel or go to nationals or something like that, it's nice to have some of these tools with you so that you can do it first thing in the morning or in the evening without having to hunt down other people or everyone trying to use one roller and you feel stressed to only use it for a short period of time. If you've got some of these things, then you can use it for as long as you need. So having these tools and doing this self-care work, there's a cost to it. There's a time cost, there's a financial cost, but that's the difference between goals and dreams. These are the things that we need to do in order to really step it up. Coaches, we need to allow our athletes to have more time and before and after games. We need to give them that. We need to build this sort of stuff into pitch time or at least team time. Parents need to help with the buy-in of doing all the extra self-care. And athletes need to prioritize your health because the outcome is so worthwhile. So when we're talking about the warm-up, it's my favorite topic, and Kevin told me not to talk forever about this. Our goal with the NextGEN program especially is to have cohesiveness amongst all the NTCs. And you might find that even just within your province, all the cohesiveness amongst all the different clubs. Doing a proper warm-up and cool-down means that our athletes are ready for a fantastic practice and they don't have to relearn it. So when you're going to a major game, when you're going somewhere, you don't have to worry about, oh my God, now we actually have to do a warm-up and I don't know how to do it. And you're changing the routine. Let's watch Jamie in some of his warm-up routines. So we typically start with the jog, couple laps of the field, some A's and B's and drills that are still a bit fast moving. Then we slow it down and do some of the dynamic stretching, lengthening the muscles, but not holding for too long. If we do too much static stretching, our muscles get too relaxed before we want them to be reactive. Of course, these are just examples. It's obviously a bit shorter. I'm sure Jamie does a longer warm-up than this. This is just part of our flow. Then we pick it up and we start to do some karaokes and sprints and mobility. So we're coming back up again. And this would be followed by, this would be done by the team. And then we're followed by individual work of some more dynamic mobility, any stretches that are short, or any supplementary work, activation work that each individual athlete might have a different way of doing, might require a different amount of time, and we'll talk about that later. So why do we want to warm up? Why do we want to provide athletes with that amount of time? Because it really creates a more prepared athlete. You're going to have a much better coaching session. You're going to have a much better training session as an athlete if you're properly warmed up. It gets our fluid moving to all the different vital organs and tissues. Our sympathetic nervous system is our fight part of the fight or flight response. So you're geared up and ready to go. Increasing range of motions of the joint, you'll just have better movement. Better movement means you won't be injured as often. It means you'll perform a little bit better and you recover a little better. Athletes tend to be a little bit more engaged as well within the program, making it them more coachable. And I think you can have a little bit more fun in a training session or even in a game if you're properly prepared. We want to have at least 20 minutes before. So whether or not that's built into the paid pitch time, and treat that as part of the training session because you're developing your athletes in this way, you can add a little bit more into it. And it can lead into ladders and stick and ball and so on would be part of the warm-up. But you could, if you're not going to do that, then make sure your athletes are coming ahead of time so that they're warmed up and properly ready to go by the time the training starts. The cool down is really just the opposite. We have mental and physical recovery, getting us prepared for the next training session. We now have blood moving to not so much the fight part of the response. The parasympathetic nervous system does our flight and calms things down. We get rid of the waste products. We're still looking to increase our range of motion so we don't have stiffness. So proper cooling down means that we recover better. And again, you're more engaged in the next training session. You're ready for the next training session. And that's so important for ongoing sessions, for ongoing development of an athlete, especially for the young guys. I think on the way home as well, then you're a little bit, you're more prepared to process what just happened in that training session instead of if you just finish and get in your car and go home. So again, we need to provide our athletes the time. So whether that's pickup times by parents, whether it's coaches saying, okay, now you're going to do this cool down together, and athletes taking ownership of doing a good cool down to finish what you just did. It's got to be really a part of the training. So I had Scott send me a video on hip mobility and the importance for field hockey of being a flexible being and not just running in straight lines. You don't do that all the time on a field hockey pitch. At some point you'll have to change direction. At some point you'll have to change your elevation. And I'll let Scott explain that.
Hey everyone, this is Scott Tupper. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly touch on a couple things that I think are critically important to excel in our sport. Obviously, it's a really athletic sport, and it requires a lot of sort of high-speed running, a lot of sort of high body position movements and agility, but also that ability to get down really low and requires that hip mobility to do things like make tackles low to the ground, to do some of the specialty skills like sweep hits or drag flicks. So I really think it's critical to maintain that sort of good hip health, stay mobile through the sort of middle part of your body in order to excel at the sport and be able to stay healthy and play for a long time.
That's awesome, Scott. Thank you so much. So a few questions here about the warm-up and part of the mobility to increase all of that. We want to, the coaches running the warm-up and the cool-down. In a perfect world, I would say the coaches are really involved, the training staff is really involved in the warm-up. For me, thinking about the development of the athlete and preparing the athlete to not get injured, I think the more involved the coaches are in the warm-up and the cool-down, the better. I think athletes comply well when the coach is watching. And I think it's a great opportunity to know your athlete. So if you notice that your athlete A is very stiff, can't touch their toes, can't get into any of these positions for cool down, then maybe that's a red flag for you. They need a little more development. Talk to the training staff or the strength coaches, talk to the athlete and say, hey, like, I think you need to improve on this. And if you never watch them warm up or never watch them cool down, you don't really get a sense of the whole athlete. This to me is really part of the training session and part of the game prep. So being involved, and there may be things that you like to have added to the warm-up, and by all means, you should be a part of what you want them to do in the warm-up. Static stretching used to be very controversial. It's not as controversial as it used to be. I think there was a lot of research that jumped the gun on static stretching to say don't do it. But now they're kind of settling down and finding value. But I would still say that would be part of your cool down. So absolutely doing the static stretching afterwards, because it does increase flexibility and range of motion. You do have to hold your stretches for a long time. Everybody wants to hold them for 15 seconds or so. 1 minute, 2 minutes, even 3 minutes to hold a stretch will give you a lot more of a physiological response than just rushing through. So if you're short on time, pick 1 or 2 stretches that you know you need to work on and hold them for a long time. That's why stretching straps are so helpful, because they'll allow you to stay in the stretch longer. So definitely part of the cool down, even doing some static stretching first thing in the morning when it's going gentle, you're not going to really go very deep, but you're going to access the joint a little bit more than the whole muscle. And sometimes that's what we, especially around hips and knees and backs for field hockey players, that's what you guys need, is all that hip and back mobility. So you need to get the joint as well as the muscle. So when we're talking about mobility, just to sort of continue with that, it's not just for soccer moms anymore. So yoga, stretching, really getting into the mobility is now such a thing for athletes all over. Pro athletes, amateur athletes, they've all really embraced the idea that we need to have flexibility in order to be strong and powerful, not just Olympic lifting and walking away. That's not a thing anymore. So even Bruce Lee works on his flexibility in order to get through his full range of motion and strength through that full range of motion. Samantha Stosur working on yoga sessions to incorporate strength and flexibility, dynamic stretches, and so on. So they're so important for maintaining, for the shoulder there. So research shows that an increase in power and performance needs flexibility. Research shows that increasing flexibility decreases your chance of injury. How awesome is that? Everyone's now taking notice on how their game gets better with flexibility. And this is where I was saying about the red flags on whether or not an athlete is flexible or not. So this might even be you as an athlete if you think, well, my hip flexibility is not very good. What are my chances of getting injured? What are my chances of getting really deep when I need to? What are my chances of recovery? And if that's something in your control that you can fix, it's almost easy, but it takes time. What's that quote? It's easy, but it's not simple, or it's simple, but it's not easy. So even our pro athletes are starting to do a lot more yoga, spending time on stretching, because it's no fun running around as a very stiff person. So sleep, such a great topic, especially for our younger athletes, especially during a pandemic and especially during the summer when there might not be any school and lack of jobs. Sleeping seems like a great option, but it really does matter as part of our self-care. And this might even be for coaches too, right? So if we want you to be mentally alert. When you're not tired, you will make fewer mistakes. Better general health. When you give your gut and your digestive system a chance to recover from the day, our gut is healthier, allowing our soft tissues to repair, our bones repair in the evening. So we get a little bit stronger. These are some of the benefits of getting a good night's sleep. And I know there's lots of athletes that I work with that say, I can't sleep, I don't sleep well. Even staff, when we're on tours and so on, that'll say, I'm just not sleeping well. And it's a real art and it's a skill and you need to work on it. Faster reaction time with sleep. Wouldn't that be nice if you just had a good night's sleep? Better decision making. How fabulous for coaches if you had well-rested athletes to have on the pitch. We need 7 to 9 hours of restful sleep for our teenage athletes. Sometimes as adults, we can get away with a little less, but for our athletes that are really growing, you might need even a little bit more. So 9, 10 hours, but it's not just all willy-nilly. Going to bed at 1 o'clock and waking up at 11 a.m. is not what I'm talking about. So how do we accomplish this good sleep? Sleep hygiene. Well, what's that? That's the winding down in the evening, on our way to bed, turning off the lights, no screen times, reducing caffeine and sugar and late night meals. And this comes into what if a late night training or a late game, you're gonna have to be really clever at finding your food and your evening routine when you get home from a late night game. Dark and cool rooms that are quiet. It's hard to sleep in a hot room. It's hard to sleep in a room there's a lot of lights on, maybe your screen is on or there's a desk light on. We really don't get the same amount of sleep that we think we're getting. Our sleep schedule is important for our hormones and just a schedule for ourselves to know when to get tired. If you're going to bed late all the time, sometimes early, your body has no idea what your rhythm is, and it's hard to get to sleep. If you can really get to a sleep schedule, you will be tired in the evening, you will be awake in the morning. And a lot of sleep doctors will say to you, they're not going to talk about medication. They're not going to talk about all the things that they think you need if you aren't getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night, if you don't have good sleep hygiene or you don't have a sleep schedule. They'll start you there. Posture while we're sleeping. I don't have a picture for it. I should have put a picture on. This guy does not have good posture while he's sleeping. I want the back to be nice and straight and the pelvis to be straight. So on your back or on your side with your head straight. So we want the pillow to take up this amount of space here. We don't want your head to be tilted down or up. You know, you've got to really keep yourself nice and straight. And I find most people get injured with the neck or the shoulders because of how they sleep, all scrunched up, or they're tense and their fist is really clenched. Having good sleep, good posture while you sleep will reduce so many injuries. Napping, it's up to you. Everyone's got their opinion on napping, whether they like to nap or not. When we're on tour, a lot of our athletes will nap, but it's got to be short, 20 to 30 minutes. You still have to do your sleep hygiene. You still have to do your sleep schedule. So if you're away at nationals or if you're away on tour, trying to get around the same time of day, a short nap, not in a chair, not on the couch, not with the lights on, not with other people watching TV. You've got to really have a good nap. And then we talked about having medications and so on. Talk to your doctor before you really start self-prescribing like melatonin and so on, because it might not be your problem. A lot of the other stuff, the holistic part might be your problem. So the question here is about suggestions for young athletes, college-age athletes that have sporadic schedules. As an athletic therapist, I have a super sporadic schedule, so I totally understand what you're talking about. And this is really where it becomes a skill. If you have mostly a schedule, coming home from a game, coming home from an exam, so on, like, late night things, you will be tired and you'll have to wind it down in a smart and clever way. If you come home from a training or school and it's 7 p.m. and you typically don't go to bed till 11, you've got 3 hours to wind down, have some food, chill, maybe do some homework, whatever. If it's 10:30 and you're just getting home, you haven't had dinner, then you can't spend the same amount of time in your schedule. So maybe that's where a smoothie comes in, a light meal. You can't eat a whole huge meal right before you go to bed anyway. It's not going to digest in the same way. Maybe you can't get homework in at that time. You'll have to go to bed and wake up earlier. These are all the things that will help to create a routine and a very structured life. Like most successful people have a schedule and they stick to it and they're structured. So if you're a student athlete, which is probably the hardest job in the world, you just have to be very clever and disciplined. When you're coming home, you can't turn the TV on at 10:30 at night to wind down. So time zones, hopefully you're working with a group that will give you a chance to adjust to the time zone before your competition. So obviously when you're going to a major games, you're going to the Olympics, World Championships, something like that, then you probably will go 2 weeks ahead of time to adjust, to acclimatize, to temperatures and all that kind of stuff, as well as to the time zone for sleeping. If you don't have that much time and you're only arriving a couple of days before and it's a big time zone, a lot of advice on time zone sleep is to forge forward. So get on the schedule of people that, like the locals, so if you arrive at 7 o'clock in the evening and you're exhausted, you've been traveling for, 30 hours or 12 hours or something crazy and you're exhausted, stay up until it's 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, whenever you want to go to bed. Then you'll get your night's sleep and you wake up and you kind of go forward. Sometimes we oversleep because we're tired, and then it takes us forever to get back onto that time schedule. We'll talk later in the presentation about nutrition, and I would say the more hydrated you are and the better your nutrition, you will handle jet lag way better. I find it's the athletes that are dehydrated, the ones that are in the airport eating all of the crap, getting to the other airport, your destination, they're exhausted, they haven't slept. What do you do when you're on the plane? Are you reading, watching TV? Are you sleeping? This is all the things that will help recover once you get to your destination. So if you're traveling to England or Europe, if it's an overnight flight, sleep, practice it, plan to sleep, That's what I know when I travel, I'll put an eye mask on, earplugs in, I put a blanket around me, I put my little neck pillow on, I close my eyes, and I've practiced it, and now I sleep when I'm on the plane. Even if I'm not in a deep sleep, at least I've been restful for a good amount of time. So that would be some tips I would say. You've got to take it seriously when you're traveling, for sure. Of course, LeBron James says, there's no better recovery than sleep. Our whole body systems recover when we're sleeping. So a little bit about nutrition. It is obviously a monster topic, and it's something that I could talk about forever about. I'm very passionate about nutrition. I'm also very passionate about fruits and vegetables. As most of the athletes know that have traveled with me, always trying to get fruits and vegetables on everybody's plate, and here's why. Oxidation in the body can really pull us down. So oxidation is the reaction of free radicals in the body. More free radicals than there are antioxidants. Free radicals are lacking electrons. They have oxygen, they're lacking electrons. They bounce around all over the place and they start breaking everything down. They react with other molecules, and they're large chain chemical reactions. That's oxidation. It's like when rust, you see a car that's rust, it's oxidized, okay? It's lost a lot of its electrons. This is inflammation in the body. So a great example is this apple, and you can do this at home, and I encourage you, and if you do it at home, send me a video or send me a picture of you doing it. half of this apple has been exposed to the air. We've all seen this in an apple that we're trying to eat and get through. It starts to turn brown because it's oxidizing. The air is starting to get at the structures. How does this happen in our body? There are many things that are in our control and many things that are not in our control. The act of simply breathing, exercising, and just being who we are causes oxidation. Poor food choices causes oxidation. Smoking, stress, some medications, maybe all. Radiation exposure, which could be a lot of sun, and it could also be a lot of imaging, right? That would cause oxidation. So because we can't fix everything, we cannot stop breathing or exercising and moving around in order to stop oxidation in our body, we're going to have to fight it in some way. That's where antioxidants come in. So antioxidants now give an electron to these free radicals so that they stabilize and become less reactive. Less damage to the body, tissues can repair faster. This is why I push fruits and vegetables so much, because it really helps in the healing. You have a hamstring strain, there's maybe a tear, shin splints, anything organ related. Our bodies can heal so much faster and better when we're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. We could talk forever about proteins and fats and that kind of stuff. And if anyone has any questions, we can talk about that at the end of the presentation. But I really wanted you to take home that you need fruits and vegetables. As our growing athletes, you need 10 to 13 vegetables in a whole day. And that's a serving size is your fist. So you need to pack them in. Antioxidants are the other side of this apple. So this apple has been sprinkled 1/2 with lemon juice. So the lemon juice is our antioxidants and stops the breakdown for quite, I mean, this won't last forever, but it slows the breakdown of the structure inside the apple. So again, if anybody wants to do this, do that little video, would be awesome to see. And of course, it's fruits and vegetables that do this. This is such an important part of self-care and being a functional athlete. And I would recommend this to the coaches, parents, staff as well, because we need to be at our best to give our athletes the best. Examples of antioxidants, I mean, it's fruits and vegetables, but the best ones, most bang for your buck, especially are berries. They have a very thin skin so they have had to already fight the sun. So they've built up their antioxidants. Things like oranges, bananas that have a very thick skin don't have as much antioxidants as berries. Go for color. So the more color something has, the more antioxidants are there. And we can talk about this later. You can look it up. There's lots of sources on antioxidants and the power that they have within our body. Fruits and vegetables, any fruits and vegetables that should be avoided. I would say that our fruits do have a lot of sugar, and there's sugar that our bodies need. You guys do a lot of running. You're basically endurance athletes. You need your carbohydrates. You need to have sugar, not from chocolate and candy bars, but from fruit is just fine. From grains is just fine. But what I find when I'm talking to athletes, and I'll say, how many fruits and vegetables do you have? Oh, I have like 5 or 6 fruit and like 1 vegetable. 1 to 2 fruits in a day are really probably max, just because of blood sugar. But berries you can really go unlimited on. So eat berries as long as you're eating enough vegetables to counter that. So focus on the vegetables because it's easy to eat a lot of fruit. I don't want to get too much into what should be avoided and what shouldn't be avoided because that's different for everybody. Fruits before a game or a training can sort of give you a bit of diarrhea because they go through you pretty quickly. So I would say I would avoid that right before a training session, and they're good more for after. Same thing with a lot of really dense vegetables. They're great recovery foods or just in small doses before. I don't want to get too much into avoiding too much. Like some people don't feel good with a lot of fiber, and some people that are not used to eating a lot of vegetables, it's going to take time for your body to get used to digesting them. So the clients that I work with, the athletes that I work with, when we're starting to eat more vegetables, will have a lot of tummy upset, and that's okay. Really, you know, you need to have more water with that, and you need to practice digesting vegetables because they're dense, right? All that fiber that's there. One good hint that I had, I learned this fall actually, and bear with me while I get it straight. You need to drink your liquids, eat your liquids and drink your solids. So that's eat your liquids and drink your solids. If you're having something like a smoothie and you're just gunning it back, your body and your digestive system isn't ready for it. So you need to almost keep it in your mouth for a little bit to get the salivary glands going and to get the digestive system ready. When you're eating vegetables, chew them a lot before you swallow it, so your digestive system has a better chance. Often we don't chew our food well enough, and then our body has to then go, oh my God, there's so much here that I'm gonna have to digest. It takes a long time, and that's when we get bloated. There's a question here on chocolate milk. I'm not a fan of chocolate milk because it's over-processed. It's got a lot of sugar in it. Dairy can be inflammatory for most people. There is some research behind it. It has the research will show you it has those elements, like it has sugar, it has protein, it has the carbohydrates. So that's fantastic. But I think the whole package isn't great. If that's all you have, then just limit it and don't have very much. But I think there's so many other real foods that would do better as a recovery. Okay. So chocolate milk. I don't like giving chocolate milk to my athletes, but if that's the only thing I think when we were at the Pan Ams, the last Pan Americans, the Pan Am Cup, they gave us chocolate milk as one of their sponsors. And I don't think many of the guys really had them. It's nice just for a little bit, but I wouldn't hang my hat on chocolate milk. So hydration. This honestly, every time we go on tour, especially with our junior athletes, we make sure that everyone has a water bottle at all times. We don't let anyone into a meeting without their water bottle. You can't get on the bus without a water bottle. You can't get in the car without a water bottle. Where's your water bottle? We say this all day long. If you're going anywhere, bring your water bottle with you. You have an increased capacity to perform. You will just perform better. That's fantastic for coaches to know, to have hydrated athletes, for parents who want to have a hydrated person in the house. Exercise is just easier. When you're not properly hydrated, your blood is thick. Your body is thick. There's not a lot of that movement. We talked about the fascia and the muscles not moving well. If there's not enough water and hydration really at the cellular level, we get sticky and it's hard. Less chance of cramping and injury. This is where I come in, right? What do we do when someone's cramping on the field? They're probably dehydrated. Injury often happens with a dehydrated athlete. Clarity in decision making. Wouldn't that be nice if all we had to do was be hydrated to just get a little bit more clear on what's happening on the field or what our coaches are asking of us? Dehydration, of course, is the opposite of all of this. The definition I got of dehydration is from the Springer Journal mentioned here. And it's just having a deficit of 2% of your body mass. That's dehydrated. Most people are walking around being dehydrated. So I kind of like this as a visual for the numbers for everybody. So if you were optimal, and that your optimal performance is what you've trained for, okay? It doesn't mean optimal of where you want to be. It's what you've trained for. How many people do you think are training and performing at 2 to 3% dehydration regularly? Your performance isn't going to be where it should be. Your heat regulation isn't going to be where it should be. And that doesn't just mean in July when it's hot. That can also happen in November when, like, some of the BC athletes are training outside, or when Ontario and Quebec and that are inside in a different environment. 4% dehydration, which isn't very much, is 20 to 30% decrease in performance. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just become hydrated and increase your performance? That is 100% within your control. And speaking as a non-nutritionist and just broadly speaking, I would say that all of our younger athletes for sure, and even our older ones, at least 3 liters of water in a day. Yes, tea can count a little bit, but coffee will negate that. It'll dehydrate you. I'm not talking about pops and other sort of chocolate milks and things like that. It really needs to be water for the most part, unless it's a decaffeinated tea, like an herbal tea, that will count towards your hydration. Supplementary exercises are sort of the bread and butter of self-care, I would say. These are some of the things that we can do to prepare for bigger movements, prepare for the pitch, prepare for training. And I'm going to let Chris show a little bit what he does when he's pitch side or before a training session. This can be before lifting. I'll show a little bit more later. Mini bands are so great for hip activation, hamstring, hip flexors, even shoulders. Moving in a lot of different directions. And Chris does this just a little bit before. You don't need to do full sets. We're not doing, 3 and 4 sets. The goal with this exercise, see how still he's keeping his trunk and his left leg, and now his right leg. That's the goal of the exercise, not necessarily the moving limb. I consider this to be a core exercise because he's keeping his trunk still. It's also a little bit of a hip mobility exercise. He's preparing his body for movement. When we do these supplementary exercises, if you're injured, a lot of these are just rehab exercises. So you might do these every day. If you're looking to not get injured, you could do them 1 to 2 times a week or introduce them into your strength training program. And then you can do them on pitch side before trainings or a game. Pick ones that work for you, pick ones that your body needs, and you can work with a healthcare professional or a coach to help you choose which ones are best. So rotator cuff exercises, and I'm not talking about strengthening. This is just those little bits that are incorporated into a strength training program. They help your shoulder stay in place. So for holding the stick in one hand and being effective, you need your rotator cuff. Scapular exercises, so for our shoulder blades, if that area is strong in the upper back, your performance really increases. You can breathe better, move better, your shoulders can move better. Reduces a lot of shoulder injuries. Hip exercises, we've talked about a little bit there with Chris's video. You're only running on 1 foot at a time. I've never seen a field hockey athlete hop down the field. So if you're going to run 1 foot at a time, you need to have strong hips, strong glutes, and a strong core. Your running efficiency will increase, your quality of movement will increase. Now, breathing exercises. Let's really sort of sit tall and practice a little bit of a belly breath. And I'm going to show a video in a little bit here. But take a really deep breath in, expand your belly, and push your back into the chair that you're sitting in. Fill your whole cylinder. Then lift your chest, pause for a moment, breathe out through your chest first, and then your belly. So let's try that again. Breathe in with your whole belly, pushing your back into your chair, lift your chest, pause, and then reverse it. Breathe out through your chest first, then your belly. Practicing that will give you a lot more quality of movement. It reduces anxiety. It's fantastic for getting ready for a game, for an exam, for anything that makes you anxious, as well as good human movement, because the diaphragm is the top part of our core. Feet exercises are a must for you guys. You put your feet through a lot of trauma from the pitch, from cutting and turning and people stepping on your feet and so on. So having strong, flexible feet will be vital for you guys as you get older and as you go through more and more trauma. how many shin splints do we deal with? I think at Nationals a couple of years ago, we had a dedicated therapist to only work with our shin splint people. And it's because the foot and the ankle aren't strong enough for the most part. And that can be really preventable. So I just wanted to show you a few supplementary exercises, some of my favorites, not an exhaustive list by any stretch, but this might give you some food for thought and sort of how you can incorporate this into your routine. So rotator cuff exercises, you don't have to get fancy. As you get good with them, you can increase the tension. These are our scapular exercises without squeezing the shoulder blades together. I see so many shoulder and neck injuries, and so many of them is because the scapula is misbehaving. If you can get your scapula under control, your shoulder injuries will really reduce. Neck injuries will really reduce. Again, I love the mini bands, do very similar to what Chris was doing. I love this as a warm-up. I do that with my athletes all the time. Becomes easy after a while because we're just maintaining. I'm in love with this one right now. It's sort of my hot exercise of the moment because it really practices keeping your trunk still, and that one leg that's not moving, that's your pillar. Don't let it move. This is showing how that mini band can help with the shoulders. So I'm keeping the mini band taut as I'm lifting up without lifting my shoulders up. Hold the core straight, lifting up, and doesn't matter what I do with my legs or my arms, keep the trunk still. Such a powerful activation before movement, before getting on the field or a gym lifting session. Learning how to activate your pelvic floor and your trunk, honestly, it'll blow your mind. Blow your mind. And here's the example of the breathing. My belly expands, my chest. It takes a lot of practice to breathe properly. And now that we're all wearing masks, if you can breathe properly, you will have a much better outcome wearing a mask all day long. We talked about the foot and the trauma that your foot goes through. So just a quick and easy strengthening exercise for your foot, for your arch to make it strong. And you'll find this is so fatiguing. I just used a short towel here, but a little hand towel is perfect. The stronger your foot, the stronger you. I have a question here about mobility and how much time can you set aside for mobility? Honestly, the more the better. So I don't know everybody's schedule. It absolutely should be included in a warm-up, but it's more dynamic. So when you're doing walking lunges, when you're doing Frankensteins, when you're doing your A's and B's, think about going through your full range of motion. That's how you get that in your warm-up. When you're cooling down, stretching, go through the full range of motion. Try to work into the full range of motion. There's your mobility. Any of the dynamic work you're doing before you're lifting, at home, anytime you're cooling down and warming up, focus on how do I get more range of motion and how do I stay comfortable in that more range of motion. If you have the opportunity to dedicate time outside of training for mobility, absolutely. Not everybody does, especially when we get into season, you get into school. So we have to be wise. And that's why I'm saying it's so important in the pitch time or before the trainings. That's your real opportunity probably to get a ton of mobility in. But know that you will become a better athlete the more mobility and activation, right? All these sort of things, the better. This is why it's hard to be at the very top, because you have to be able to do all these things. And that's why amateur athletes, it's such a grind, because you have to have a job. You have to do all these things. And it's hard to work. It's hard to go to school, take care of your body, train. I get it. Social life has to drop. Maybe you're not doing as much school at once. It's 100%, it's a balancing act. The better you can balance it, the better. And we can talk more about that later if someone wants to have a chat more. So when we're on tour, I want you to, this is sort of our little bit of a schedule, and I want you to notice the theme and how focused we are on one task. And this might answer that mobility question too. So if lights out, we really give the time for quality sleep. I don't know if the athletes are lying in bed with their eyes closed sleeping, but at least the lights are out, they're calm, everyone's in their own room, best we can do. In the morning, you have to have a morning routine. You can't roll out of bed and go to a training or get to the meal. Are you having a shower? Are you waking up? Are you doing a little bit of stretching? Then we usually roll into a training or a match. There has to be a routine behind that. You know, I used to send out, or Elisa will send out a schedule of, sometimes that's shower now. Then you're going to fill up your water bottles. Your bag should be packed by this time. You've got to get down to the bus by this time. You've got to leave for the bus at this time. That's your routine. It's part of self-care, and it's preparing yourself for the field. Team meal, so more food. And then there's a real opportunity. So if you're just going to sit and play a video game or sit and socialize, you're losing so much valuable time for mobility, maybe getting some treatment, taking a short nap. We're often doing another training or match session again. So preparing for that. We eat again. Then we do some more self-care, treatment, sleep, depending on what time it is we get back. We get back really late. The priority is a light meal and sleep, because then we have the next day to go through maybe some more recovery. You have to play with, you get back at 9 o'clock at night, you can do a little bit of treatment. You get back at 7 o'clock at night, you can do lots of treatment and mobility. Get back at 11 o'clock, the priority is sleep. And then of course, getting ready for bed appropriately on your own little routine. So basically self-care is a priority. And I can talk about this all day. As a therapist, it's obviously something I'm passionate about for my athletes. Coaches need to focus on, you know, on the field, on the play, on what's happening, what the outcomes are. But this is a mode to get there. It's a vehicle to get there, to get your athletes to perform at their best. We need to give time for this to happen. So thank you so much for coming out and being with me today. As I said, I can stick around, answer any questions about mobility and timing and things like that, any nutrition questions. Otherwise, give me a shout. I'm open to you guys sending me an email. Check out my website. I have a little blog there that has some videos. It has lots of different exercises for various injuries and articles attached to them that we could always talk about if you want more expansion on. So that's it for me. I'll send it back to you, Kevin.
Jen, thank you so much. That was so great. Obviously, really cool to see the holistic, every angle at, body maintenance. And as an athlete myself, I know I'm definitely going to be reviewing the sleep slides for sure and the mobility stuff. So that's really cool. Thank you. And everyone who tuned in, thank you for tuning in. We'll be archiving this either tomorrow or by Monday at the latest. And next week we have Indy Sembi on he's the coach of the junior national team. So Indy's leading a session next week, and that should be great as well. So Jen, thanks again. And to everyone, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Perfect. Thank you.